what's up, YouTube? This is your boy Alex, and today is Friday, another working day. Now, I've been talking to a friend of mine behind the scenes, and he told me to wait until the month of March to drop the video Women's International Day. Given that some people saw my other video 24 hours ago, some of them liked the video, and some of them they're gonna get in their feelings, cause that's what people do on the internet. That's what they do. They actually get in their feelings when they don't like when you put something out that tells the truth. This is gonna be kind of like telling the truth, but it's gonna be giving you, how should I put this? It's one of these new concept videos that when I think of it because it has to be thought of and planned out. So this one is because of the virus that's been happening in another country. You know, you heard what happened to China, and you heard that it could possibly, break into the United States. And usually my channel doesn't talk about the end of the world, doomsday stuff. But in this video, it's still gonna be a part of television and film series, but it's gonna start to blur, like, it's gonna be a compare and contrast. So we're gonna be taking television and film, and then we're gonna see how well received this is, and if it's well received, then somewhere around spring break, I'll probably turn around and make a three-part series. You know how I do my web YouTube documentaries. If they're that good, they get 2 videos, 3 videos. The only way it ever gets 4 or 5 videos if it's that good. And it's very rare if my videos are that good. 2 or 3 is what I'm aiming for. So today's title is going to be called Sex Game, The Walking Dead versus Resident Evil, but, what a question mark, what if it was real? Now, the reason why I'm doing this is because it's kind of like a new series, What If It's Real? We're on my sports channel. I'm doing What If in boxing, What If? Well, this one's going to be What If It's Real, but we're taking stuff from movies and television and try to play out the real closeness scenario to what you expect if something from The Walking Dead just became reality. Or if something from Resident Evil became a reality. Like, it was no longer television, it was no longer fiction or make-believe, but it now was real. Let's start with The Walking Dead. I think The Walking Dead is probably 5 to 10 times more likely to happen in a real life scenario. When you hear stories about the Ebola virus, the H1 virus, the chicken pox, the mad cow, mad chicken disease. Yeah, I had to actually check up mad chicken because I heard of mad cow, but I didn't know they had the mad chicken disease. And I was like, what the hell? And I was in college and someone told me, instead of you looking at Ninja Turtles and Dragon Ball Z, why don't you go do some real research? So I done some real research. And I remember somebody asked me this in college, and I didn't have an answer. And I told him, you got to give me at least 5 years or 10 years later to sit down and actually think of this if this was a real possibility. The Walking Dead is 5 to 10 times more likely to become a real life scenario. Just sit down and think about this for a minute. Let's say you're in college, or let's say you're at work, or you're at the gym, and one day the power goes out. And the power don't go out for 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. The power goes out for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. It's a month, 2 months, 3 months, 4 months. From 4 weeks to 4 months, there's no power. You're now being forced to look for food and water. And all of a sudden, you become the main character from the television show of The Walking Dead. The first season always originated with me because it got me thinking, what if some shit does go down? What if I one day go to Bank of America or Citibank and put in my credit card and no money comes out? What if I one day went to McDonald's or Burger King and it was a ghost town and I couldn't find anyone and I couldn't get no food and water, and instead of 30 minutes, It took me 5 hours to find food and water. It got me really sitting down and really thinking long and hard about what YouTuber Canadian Prepper said in his videos in a grid down situation. And I always thought if we were ever in the end of the world, shit hits the fan type of shit, I always thought The Walking Dead's more real and more realistic. Think about it. You wouldn't just be able to go to any city in any state that you want because there's going to be police, there's going to be martial law, there's going to be the military, there's going to be people on top of rooftops with guns setting up traps. And to me, I kind of went, it's going to be a cross between The Walking Dead and The Purge. Like, if you're in the state, it's Walking Dead right off the back. So if you live in the South, you're most likely going to be in a Walking Dead scenario where you just can't go to any city and any town and get food and water and shelter. There's going to be a series of challenges that's going to be waiting for you. And they're not going to be challenges that you just finish in one day. They're going to be challenges that might take 5 hours, 10 hours. They might take 2 months. It all depends on how mentally tough you are. And that's the thing about The Walking Dead, is that The Walking Dead is a concept where it's not about if you're the biggest, the strongest, or the fastest athlete. It's if you're the smartest person. The smartest person is most likely going to survive. Where if you take someone that all they think about is, I'm the biggest, I'm the strongest, I'm the fastest, they're most likely going to lose in that outcome. Because it isn't just zombies walking around that you're going to be fighting. You know, there's going to be zombies, there's going to be the police, there's going to be the military, there's going to be criminals you're going to be forced to fight. And then you got to take into account if you could find food and water, how do you know the food and water hasn't been, rigged with traps? In those old war movies, you see somebody get a bottle of water and there's like some grenades attached to it, and the guy drinks the water, but he doesn't realize something's attached to it. So The Walking Dead's a more real concept of what would happen if it was real. What would you do? And I always envision myself as the main character from the first season, where he wakes up in the hospital and he goes into the hallway and he notices there's no one there. Like the whole town has been abandoned. And he's trying to make sense of how I'm going to get to my wife and my kid. What's happening to my brother? What's happening to the police force? So if it's The Walking Dead, you're most likely going to be in a if you live in the South or Midwest, you're probably going to be in a Walking Dead scenario. If you live in the city, like if you live in New York City, Los Angeles, Atlanta, Chicago, Houston, Dallas, San Antonio, Phoenix, Las Vegas, if you live in cities like that, you're probably looking at the Purge, where there's no food and water, there's no gas, there's no electricity, and if you want these things, you're going to be forced to fight for these things. And it's going to be every man or every woman for themselves type of scenario. So if you're in a city, it's most likely 5 to 10 times most likely you're going to get a purge. Where if you live in the state, you're getting The Walking Dead. Now, somebody might say, why not Resident Evil? I'm going to tell you why the only way Resident Evil would actually become a scary ass concept. Because of the virus. Like, you think of the T virus from Resident Evil, and you think of how someone would have to come into a city and release the virus for it to do all types of damage. Now, the reason why I choose Walking Dead and The Purge both over Resident Evil is that Resident Evil likes to defy the laws of physics. Like, if you look at all the movies, they don't follow none of the conventional rules of horror. They don't even follow simple rules of reality, actually. Like, think about it. In those movies, they make it where the guy or the girl's a badass, they kick the zombie's ass, and they save the day. And they live either in that film, and it carries over into the next movie, or if you're not one of those popular characters, of course you die in the movie, or if you get to the next movie, you'll probably be dead anyway. They don't really they focus on survival, but what's happened with those movies is that they made them about martial arts, shooting, gunplay, and kicking people's ass and talking hardcore gangster versus The Walking Dead, where the concept doesn't focus on if you're the biggest, the strongest, or the fastest. It's who's the smartest. Resident Evil deals with you gotta find food, water, gas, electricity. You gotta find shelter. You gotta find other people to pair up with to survive with. Now, it's not until season 4, season 5 of The Walking Dead that you could see it goes from The Walking Dead to okay, we're in the city now, and it's kind of taking things of the Purge. Whereas Resident Evil, you got people turning into monsters, not necessarily zombies. They're turning into monsters. And you kind of look at that like, I know none of this stuff is real, but the way they put the plot together that would only the first film of Resident Evil is only a real life scenario. Okay, you got someone that's an undercover that's trying to bust Umbrella, a corporation that's pumping out a lot of shit, and they get trapped on the inside. The virus breaks out. They can't contain it. It affects everyone. Everyone gets infected, and they have to send in a sweeper team to come in to find out how the virus got, uncontrollable. How did it get out? And only to find out that somebody from the inside leaked it on the outside. Now, the second one could be a real scenario because it would be a continuation of, okay, the infection has reached. But when you start looking at Resident Evil 3 Extinction, it can't be a part of real life because why is the main character getting superpowers? Same thing with Resident Evil 4. They try to go back to making it realistic, but they still go over the top. Same thing with Resident Evil Retribution and Resident Evil the final chapter. They keep going over the top with these movies. So it becomes hard for you to take the Resident Evil movies serious because they keep trying to make everything go over the top. Like, okay, I could imagine a rock roller, turning into a zombie rock roller and then come chase at me with some wings and can fly. But I prefer The Walking Dead because it's more realistic. Where you go to a town, you're going to have to fight for food and water, for gas, electricity, shelter. You're going to have to find you a house or an apartment that has been abandoned but still have supplies. Where in Resident Evil, it's just shoot 'em up, bang, bang, blow some shit up, kick ass, and say some hardcore words. That's if you love Resident Evil. Only the first film and the second film of Resident Evil gives you real life scenarios that you go, yeah, if this shit ever hit the fan, yeah, I could see this shit. Like, Resident Evil don't even show you how do you even survive a catastrophe. They just have the people survive the catastrophe and they're alive in the next movie. And you're like, come on, man, if this shit was real, all the people in the movie would be dead in a matter of days. Because there would be no way for you to run away from a nemesis, let alone you dodge a nuke that's going to blow up the whole damn city. Walking Dead, on the other hand, makes you actually sit down and think like, yeah, if this shit actually did happen right now, you know, you lose power, you can't call no one on your house phone, can't call nobody on your cell phone, your laptop's dead, your computer's dead, you try to start your car up, your car won't start. Yeah, Walking Dead makes you sit down and actually make you think and make you evaluate what's more important. Where in the Purge, if it's in the city, you still are going to concern yourself with not only for your well-being, but for the well-being of others. Where in the city, it's every man and every woman for themselves. Now, the concept of The Walking Dead is a nice way of saying when everything all fails, you are going to give in to the beast. See, there are talks on the internet what happens when a man starts to act more like an animal. And The Walking Dead deals with that concept. What happens when being an animal is the only way for you to survive. Where in The Purge, you're seeing people turn into animals because they can't grasp the reality that there's no water, there's no food. Where in that type of sense, there is food, there is water, but it's an experiment, and the experiment lost control. Where in The Walking Dead, uh, there isn't no experiment, or until you find out there is one, but then you find out too many people are being forced to do things they don't want to do. Where The Walking Dead, you can imagine the governor, or any governor for that matter, you can imagine any governor in the world of Walking Dead saying, all right, I got to take the law into my own hands. So it's more realistic. You can imagine a guy gets his hand cut off and has to have a hook. Because why? It's his survival's on the line. You can imagine a bunch of strangers that don't like each other being forced to team up because why? The Walking Dead's a concept where if you want to get food and water, you might have to be friends with someone that you don't like. Like you could be at work, you could be at school, you could be at the gym, you could be on the road and run into someone that you haven't seen for 10, 15, 20 years and be forced to team up with them. The Purge, it's every man, every woman for themselves. You get people that have all this anger, all this rage, and they want to get revenge on their boss at work. Or a teacher fucked me over in high school and college, so I want to get back at the teacher who fucked me over in high school and college. Or my boss didn't give me a raise. Or this jackass cut me off on the street. Every time I get on the road, he cut me off. Or the bus driver always passed me up on a bus stop because they think I don't pay my fare. The Purge deals with what happens when you allow someone to actually get revenge and retribution, where in The Walking Dead, it's a concept of your survival depends on your intelligence. You know, you can be the biggest, the strongest, and the fastest and still get killed. Where in Resident Evil, they ignore everything. They ignore the laws of physics. They ignore the conventional horror making. And that's why a lot of people can't take the Resident Evil movies too serious. There are moments where shit is supposed to scare you in those movies, and you laugh at the shit that scares you in those Resident Evil movies. Or if you look at The Walking Dead, you're terrified because you can imagine if a man walks down the street and he's begging for your help and he gets hit by a truck, and the truck turns over and blows up because the guy got infected by a virus. So The Walking Dead scares the shit out of you because it makes you actually sit down and it makes you think and reflect that if there is no power, no food, no water, and no gas and electricity, now you have to go out and find these things. If you're in the state, you're looking at a Walking Dead scenario. If you're in the city, you're looking at the Purge. Resident Evil can only happen if somebody comes to your city or town and leaves a package behind and then a virus gets out. That's the only way Resident Evil becomes a reality. And that's like the ultimate horror because you don't want any of these concepts to become a reality because none of us are trained for it. Like, yeah, I am a martial arts expert and I am well versed in martial arts. But even if I'm well versed in martial arts, that doesn't mean there could be 5 other people who are also well versed in martial arts. So I made this video because it's a compare and contrast. It is in television and film, so what do I think is better? I'm going to say The Walking Dead and The Purge is much better than Resident Evil. Because in Resident Evil, they just ignore stuff and say, it's okay, you could survive. Where Walking Dead, you're gonna have to kick ass and haul ass to survive. You can't stay in one place for too long. That's what Walking Dead teaches you. You can't stay in one place for too long. The Purge is more like a social experiment out of control, and people just turn into animalistic and become so sadistic and violent that they like it because they feel like it's their real personality, where people in the Purge who don't want to give into the violence, they're more terrified at the fact that the powers that be just allow shit to happen. Where in the Walking Dead scenario, you can never blame the powers that be. It's just nature just took over and said, "Fuck it, we're taking this shit back." That's what makes Walking Dead so real. The Purge is more of a situation where you're left on your own free will devices, and whatever you choose to do, you just choose to do until that 7 hours or 24 hours is up. Whereas in Resident Evil, you're just in a situation where they just ignore all the conventional rules. A helicopter could just crash in the city in a movie of Resident Evil, and people survive, and you'd be like, what the fuck, what? Where in a real life scenario, we would all be dead. Walking Dead doesn't ignore those rules. Walking Dead kind of shows you the consequences of one's actions. The Purge shows you the consequences of everyone's actions. Resident Evil just shows you what happens if you get a consequence, you're still okay. So Resident Evil just ignores a lot of shit that's making you scratch your head. Where in The Walking Dead, you go, oh, this shit better never happen. You watch The Purge, oh, this shit better not hit the fan. Resident Evil, you probably look at it like, this shit don't even scare me. So this was just one of these fun, happy concept videos. Some of you pretty much understand the logistics of this video. So until then, peace.